Today I get to interview Mick Pealing, who was the frontman from the mighty Australian band The Stars. The Stars will be at Way Out West this coming Sunday, the 26th, of course at Newport Bowls Club. We hope to see you there. Please hit the like button, leave some comments and subscribe to this channel because there'll be lots more interviews coming up. Rock on, my friends. So can you tell me a little bit about growing up in Adelaide in the 50s? I know your mum and dad were really into their music and they had a very eclectic taste in music from what I've read.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see much of the 50s. I was born in 55. So, I would have been 6 years old going into the 60s. But the 60s was a fantastic decade for growing up with music. I mean, all the 60s pop music, particularly from England, bands like the Small Faces and the Beatles, of course, and the Kinks, etc., etc. I really was drawn towards that style of music, and it was played all the time because my mother really enjoyed that style of music. My father was more a jazz man, so I got to hear a lot of jazz as well that he was into. So yeah, as you say, very eclectic, a very mixed bag as far as listening to music.
And was it always your idea to be a singer in a rock and roll band, or was that something that grew over time?
No, I was just a music fan, and I fell into it by accident. I was at a gig in our neighbourhood. This house used to host live shows every weekend, every Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon or something like that. And they were in this magnificent house in Seacliff Beach in South Australia, where they had this huge front yard where they'd have bands playing underneath their porch, and the front yard would just be full of people because it was free concerts basically. And myself and a bunch of friends would go to that nearly every weekend. And I remember one weekend, one of the guys in the band said over the microphone, "Does anybody know the words to All Right Now?" This would have been, around about 69, I suppose, when the song first came out. And I said to my friend, "I do." And he stood up and goes, "He does." So, I sort of got dragged up on stage to sing this song because my friend dobbed me in. And a couple of the guys in the band, one was Mal Eastick and another one I think might have been Glenn Dowding. And after performing the song with my back to the audience, I might add, I guess I sang it well enough for them to take my details, and we got in touch later on. So yeah, as I say, I had no intention of being a singer. I just basically fell into it.
That's sort of led into my next question. I was going to ask how you met up with Mal and Glenn Dowding, and of course the incredible Andy Durant. Where did Andy come into it?
Andy was a friend of mainly of Glenn Dowding's. In fact, I think Andy spent some time living at Glenn's place, and like all of us sort of lived in the same neighbourhood. And Andy ended up in a band with Glenn and Mal called Astrakhan. And around the same time, I was singing for a band called Nantucket, and we were sort of not rivals, but we'd play together sometimes, and then separately in other venues. But they ended up losing their singer, and I was a little sort of iffy about the band Nantucket. So they asked me if I'd be interested in joining up with them with a new project kind of thing, which became Stars.
Well, so what was the scene like in South Australia in those formative years? And I believe it was B. Birdles who mentioned your talents to Michael Gudinski.
Yeah, actually, just I should go to part two of your question about Andy Durant before we get into that. Andy, around the time that I joined up with the book with Mal Glendowding and Graham Thompson on bass, which became Stars, Andy was overseas at the time. He was living in I think in Europe or something like that, somewhere. I just know he was overseas. We I'll get back to Andy in a sec. We Stars as a four-piece used to play at a place in Hindley Street in Adelaide called Countdown. And we'd end up supporting all the bands that came over from the East Coast, you know, bands like the Dingoes, Chain, Little River Band, and all the rest. And Beeb Birtles took a shine to us, and he suggested to Michael Gudinski that he should have a listen to our stuff and consider signing us up, which he did, and he did. And the Little River Band connection stayed on because Rick Formosa ended up producing, you know, the early stuff. Well, Beeb produced the first single, which was Quick on the Draw, and I think he might have done Winning Hand as well, which was the second single. But yeah, but that sort of a strong connection with Little River Band, which sort of stayed on throughout the years. But that's how Beeb's name gets mentioned as far as the early Stars go.
And when did you guys relocate to Melbourne, and what was the reason?
It was pretty much immediately because I mean the record company was there, and we wanted to be close to where the action was, which was the eastern states, Melbourne or Sydney. We hadn't decided whether it would be Melbourne or Sydney that we'd move to, but Gudinski suggested that we actually make it Melbourne so we could be close to the record company. I mean, you know, ways of communication back then aren't as simple as what they are today, you know. So it was always good to be close to your main office. So yeah, that's the main reason why we moved to Melbourne, just to be where the action was. And we went to Melbourne under the illusion that we needed a gimmick, which was sort of brought on by our manager at the time, Jeff Skews. He's no longer with us, but he can't defend himself in any way. But he suggested that we needed an image, and which was the cowboy sort of look, you know, the sheriff badges and the cowboy outfits and stuff. So we went along with that, but quickly realised once we got to Melbourne and started playing that it wasn't such a good idea. You know, playing with bands at the station hotel and stuff dressed as cowboys wasn't a great idea. But of course the Johnnies ran with that, didn't they? And were quite successful. So maybe we should have stayed with it, but we decided not to stay with it, which led us to the first album. And we realised that we probably didn't have enough songs between Mal and myself to make a whole album. So Mal got in touch with Andy, who had just gotten back from overseas, and asked and knew that he was a songwriter. He asked if Andy would be interested in being a second guitar player and helping out with the songs. And Andy agreed to that and came along, and the first song he showed us was Look After Yourself. So we thought, yeah, that's that's a good one to start. Yeah, and of course the first single with Andy was another song he had called Mighty Rock.
You mentioned Little River Band before, and the great Roger McLaughlin came over and joined the band.
Yeah.
What sort of dynamics did Roger bring to the Stars?
It was pretty hard for him at first, because I mean the original Stars as the four-piece, when we first got to Melbourne, we did a lot of shows with I guess teenage audiences, so we'd developed quite a strong teenage following, and Graham Thompson, the bass player at the time, was very, very popular with the young girls, I might say. And when Graham left the band and Roger came in, Roger got a lot of flack from these particular people because Graham was no longer there. In fact, they were holding signs up in the audience saying, "Where's Graham?" and all this kind of thing. So Roger felt a little unsafe at times. But um, yeah, I mean, both guys, Roger and Graham, are fantastic bass players. There's no doubt about that. Probably slightly different styles. Probably Roger's a bit more into jazz, so I guess his playing style is a bit more complex, and Graham's is a bit more simple. But there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that's the only difference I can sort of put my finger on between the two players.
The Stars supported some incredible international acts over the years. I was looking at Joe Cocker, the Beach Boys, Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah.
They must have been heady times. Do you have many recollections of meeting some of those guys?
We never got a chance to meet Linda Ronstadt. She was pretty aloof, but we did get to meet the guys in her band. Waddy Patel, and off the top of my head, I can't remember the names of the other guys. We got on pretty well with those guys, and I remember the show we did in Melbourne, which was at the MCG. We had a double that night, the support to Linda, and then a show later on at Bombay Rock, and down in Brunswick there. And half the guys in Linda Ronstadt's band came down to a gig afterwards, and we ended up with them on stage with us at Bombay Rock. That was a wonderful night.
Yeah.
Joe Cocker was, I'll never forget our tour with Joe Cocker. I mean, that's the tour that started on Great Keppel Island, and they managed to get themselves kicked off Great Keppel Island for their behaviour. And I remember Mike Willisey with his, I think he was on a current affair or something at that time. I think his show was called. They actually flew to Great Keppel Island and did a story with Joe Cocker and Nicky Hopkins, who were both, of course, just totally bat-faced. And it just made the world press. You know, it was just, their first show in down this way, and they get sort of booted off an island. But yeah, Joe was, he was incredible. I mean, it was a force of nature. I mean, he was, most of the time he was just away with the Pixies, but as soon as he got on stage, he became, the Joe Cocker that we all know and love.
Was that the tour in '79, and the live album was released titled 1157? That's a strange name for an album. Where did that come about?
That was the amount of gigs that we did in our lifespan. Right. That's pretty much give or take an afternoon show. Yeah, that was basically it. No, there's no deep meaning to it at all. No. 3 minutes till midnight.
It was really sad that when Andy passed due to cancer, very young age of 25.
Yeah.
And the Andy Durant Memorial Concert was filmed. It's probably one of my favourite ever music films, along with The Last Waltz. Do you have many recollections of that show at all?
Yeah, I have a few. So some memories are a bit blurry, but I do recall rehearsing with the band. It was a very quick rehearsal, because getting everybody together, as you can well imagine, members of Cold Chisel, members of the Dingoes, and et cetera, Richard Clapton, getting them all together, and Renee Gayer, I must say. Getting them all together at one time was pretty difficult. I was basically looking after the singers, and Mel was looking after the band rehearsals. And we rehearsed, I think it was 2 days before the show, and we had a fairly lengthy sound check, and that was pretty much all the rehearsals we got. We pretty much relied on the guys' homework, Everybody was pretty confident about it until the sound check, where it wasn't sounding too good. So Mel and I sort of looked at each other and said, "Oh my God, this is going to be a bag of shit." But as soon as the band was introduced that night, it just all fell together. And adrenaline or whatever, it just all came together.
You teamed up with Billy Miller, the great Billy Miller, for a band, the Spaniards.
Yeah.
Billy has an encyclopedia knowledge of rock music. I once seen him at the Prince Albert and Williamstown, and there was an old Ghost Set top 40 chart on the wall, and he proceeded to sing the whole chart. Well, he should be so much better known. I know he's within musicians, he's a musician's musician, but not a lot of the Australian public know too much about Millie.
No, I mean, I think, you know, a lot of people our age obviously know the song "Don't Fall in Love," and that's pretty much all they know of Billy. And the fact that he's a bit of a wild man and that he is a one-eyed St Kilda supporter.
Like Sam C.
Yeah. Billy is still going strong. He still loves performing and writing songs. I do believe that he's got another album in him, you know. He's got a lot of fans, as you say, and a lot of respect from a lot of people. And you know, I love him to death. You know, it's just a great guy. We didn't get on initially. We were like chalk and cheese, but we certainly not learned to live with each other. But yeah, we just sort of bonded. You know, probably not so much in the Spaniards' days, but after that, you know.
Sort of like our answer to Keith Richards in some ways.
Yeah, I guess in a lot of ways. Although Keith Richards is right into the blues, and you know, where Billy is more a Beatles, Kinks kind of man. You know what I mean? He doesn't know a lot. He doesn't know a lot about the blues, but he sure knows a lot about the English sort of you know, style of music.
So let's fast forward to the present. You perform in several bands, Raw Brit, Mick Pealing Band, a fantastic duo with the multi-talented Nick Charles, and of course the Stars. With all those different connections, is that a way to keep the music fresh for yourself?
Yeah, in a way, and it does. I mean, I still, let's talk about Raw Brit for starters. I mean, I still get off on the music of you know, the late '60s and through the '70s hard rock from Brit. I mean, I love the Small Faces and I love Deep Purple and Free. And Raw Brit is my opportunity to sort of perform that kind of music, which I absolutely love. And the players in Raw Brit understand that music so well, and it's an absolute joy to do it whenever we can. I mean, we really only do probably 3, maybe 4 shows a year because of mainly because of the fact that all the players are so busy in it doing other things, you know. Like, you know, your Baby Animals and your Boom Crash Opera and Mark Seymour's band, etc., etc. It's kind of hard to sort of get everybody in one place at the one time. But I love doing it, and we've got a show booked in March at the MIMA, which is going to be a blast. So that's one thing. Stars with Nick Charles has been a real blessing, because I knew all along that Nick Charles was a songwriter, and I'd been known to sort of dabble in songwriting, but Nick Charles has come along, and he's really got me off my ass. And we've written now for 2 Stars albums, and we've just released our first duo album as well. So, and all the stuff is bar 1 or 2 songs is co-written by us. You know? And that's an absolute joy.
Nick, I think Nick's a better singer than he thinks he is sometimes.
Yeah. Look, I like to think he's maybe sort of picked up a few things from me. At the same time, I've picked up things from him with the guitar player. You know, I mean, I'm a much better guitar player now than what I was before I met Nick. You know, and it's a good thing to think that we've both sort of rubbed off on each other in those ways. You know.
Tell me about your radio program and where can our viewers tune in to the show and what sort of music do you present?
Oh, well, once again, it's sort of mixed up a little, and it sort of features all the things that I love, you know. Like the morning program on Thursdays between 7 and 9. It's called The Breakfast Show with Mick Pealing, and it's on 96.5 Inter FM, which is a community radio station running out of the Warringal Shopping Centre in Heidelberg. I get to play all those 60s and 70s sort of things. I sort of do the program as a you know, what happened on this day kind of program, and I sort of line the music up with that, whether it be birthdays or you know, things that happened on a particular day, you know, spanning between 2 or 3 days in that time. And it usually works out really well. It usually works out to be quite an interesting mix of music, you know. And at the same time, I do requests as well, so I get people texting in and requesting songs, and we start up conversations on my Facebook page and all that kind of thing. So it's a bit of a community thing at the same time. So that's lovely. And Monday nights between 8 and 10, same radio station. I do I suppose a country rock, roots and Americana kind of show, which is my main love these days. That style of music. So yeah, I just play new releases from that area. Plus, you know, I go right back to you know, Hank Williams stuff all the way through.
I was going to, I didn't have this question written down, but we just going back to the Stars, were the band a big influence on the way that Stars went about their music?
Absolutely. Andy was a big fan. Like none of us had ever heard of the band before Andy came along. He was right into them. He was right into you know, Robertson's style of songwriting. I mean, you listen to something like Mighty Rock, and that's pretty much based around The Shape I'm In by the band. You know, it's sort of not emulating, but Andy had that song in mind when he was putting Mighty Rock together. Andy was also into people like Jerry Jeff Walker, the Byrds, Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, those kind of bands, you know. So he brought that influence directly into Stars, and it's you know, I'm glad he did.
Again, you've just mentioned a name here, Jerry Jeff Walker. I'm a huge fan. About 3 or 4 years ago, he sadly passed on now. I got some friends of ours, we were in Texas, and they took me to Green Hall, and Jerry Jeff Walker was playing. It was one of the highlights of my life. To sit in that, it's like a big beer barn, and everyone was singing every song. It was just amazing to see him live.
Yeah, well, you can hear that in his live recordings. You can really hear the excitement in the audience, and you know, all the hooping and hollering in the background and stuff.
Yeah.
Up against the wall, Redneck Mother and all that stuff. Yeah.
That was a ripper.
Yeah.
So we've got the great gig coming up way out west on Sunday the 26th. Tell us what we can expect on the day and who will be in the band with you.
It'll be a mix of things, music-wise. We'll go right back, of course. We won't go back as far as Quick on the Draw, although I'm sure some people would like to see us do that one. So, but we will be doing songs from Paradise, from Land of Fortune, 1157, and of course one song from the Annie Durant Memorial Concert, which I think is fairly obvious. And we'll be doing a mix of things from the new albums as well.
Fantastic. And Mal Eastick will be in the band, and Roger?
Yeah, Ed Bates.
Oh, wow.
Ed Bates on pedal steel, and Nick Charles on guitar, and Eric Chess on drums.
Oh, fantastic, mate.
I might even sing a few songs as well.
So looking forward to seeing you guys perform. And when we talked about Royal Brit before, maybe we could, because you guys played the old RSL for us many years ago, maybe we can line something up towards the end of the year.
Love to, mate. Love
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
The more gigs I can do with those guys, fantastic.
All right.